Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it is an honour to respond for the Government in the last debate until September, and may I extend my thanks to you, the Deputy Speakers, and to Mr Speaker for your stewardship of this House and everyone that works here in Parliament and our constituency officers. And can I also thank all of our NHS staff who are keeping the service going despite record demand over the summer. The Right Honourable Member for Goole and Pocklington has raised an extremely serious matter, and I want to start by expressing my heartfelt sympathy to all the families who were affected by the terrible events at the Countess of Chester Hospital. And as a mother of 2 daughters, I cannot begin to imagine what they are going through. And on top of their grief, they have been subject to a level of press scrutiny that would match anything we have faced as members of this place. And they have been left in limbo, waiting for answers. And as someone who advocates for constituents at my own trust, I know this will take an additional toll on their mental health. And I know all of us in this chamber can agree that they deserve closure. The previous government established the Thirlwall Inquiry in October 2023 to examine the events at the Countess of Chester Hospital NHS Foundation Trust. Its terms of reference are available online. Lady Justice Thirlwall's recommendations will help us to understand what went so wrong at the Countess of Chester. Her inquiry has now finished hearing evidence, and the final report will be published at the earliest practical date. Madam Deputy Speaker, Lucy Letby was found guilty by her peers following two criminal trials, and she is currently serving 15 whole life sentences for murder and attempted murder, and her convictions were upheld by the Court of Appeal. This is an independent judicial process, and it is not for the government to comment on judicial decisions or appeals. And the Right Honourable Gentleman has called for the inquiry's terms of reference to be amended or expanded to reflect the ongoing public debate around the safety of Miss Letby's convictions. But the point of the inquiry is not to rehearse Lucy Letby's trial. It is focusing on how people responded within the trust based on what they knew or should have known at the time of the events. The inquiry is now in the report writing stage, and I have every confidence that the Chair will consider all the evidence when drawing conclusions and writing her report and recommendations. That is why I do not consider that there is a case to either amend or expand the terms of reference on the information currently available. There is a separate process going through the Criminal Cases Review Commission that received a full application in relation to Miss Letby's case in April 2025. And the merits of the application are solely for the CCRC to consider and, if appropriate, to refer the case for further consideration to the Court of Appeal. An application to the CCRC does not itself indicate that the convictions are likely to be unsafe. And again, the Right Honourable Gentleman will understand that this is an independent process, and it is not for the government to comment on nor intervene in individual applications. I am aware that the Right Honourable Gentleman has also called for the inquiry to be paused or suspended while the CCRC is reviewing Miss Letby's application. An application was made by legal teams for Miss Letby and former executives at the Trust to the Inquiry Chair to consider exercising her powers to pause the inquiry under Section 17 of the Inquiries Act 2005. An application was made in parallel by the same legal teams to the then Secretary of State, my right honourable friend, the member for Ilford North, to suspend the inquiry under Section 13 of the Inquiries Act 2005. And the basis for both applications was that the inquiry should be halted until the CCRC had determined Letby's application to it. And in March 2025, the Chair refused the application and set out her reasons in detail. And for transparency, this has been made available online. In her judgment, the Chair considered, among other things, the question of fairness. And she was satisfied that the inquiry process had been fair and would not become unfair because there is a possibility that all the convictions were unsafe. And my right honourable friend, the member for Ilford North, agreed with that reasoning. It would not be appropriate for the government to speculate on the outcome of the CCRC's determination, and we should take into account that the families have not supported any pause or suspension of the inquiry either. Even if, hypothetically, we did take that unprecedented step, I concur with my right honourable friend, the member for Ilford North, that any suspension would create unnecessary delays and become a barrier to the families receiving the answers they deserve. There has been no new information that would make us think twice about this decision, nor to change the terms of reference. And there is a strong public interest in the inquiry being concluded as soon as possible. And that is why this government shall not suspend the inquiry pending the outcome of Ms Letby's application to the CCRC to review her convictions. I will.
For giving way. The Countess of Chester Hospital is the local hospital for myself and for many constituents of mine. They will rightly want to know what the outcome of the inquiry is. On top of these historic matters, last year the CQC rated the Countess of Chester Hospital's urgent and emergency care services inadequate and found the overall hospital requires improvement. And whilst I recognise the work that the Trust is doing to deliver against their improvement plan, and I thank them for the communication they have with me, there is still vital work to be done. And I wondered whether the Minister could set out what she is doing to ensure that they meet those improvements, and so that my constituents can be reassured that they will be getting access to the best possible healthcare they deserve.
Yeah. Can I thank the Honourable Member for her question? She makes some really important, valid points. Of course, the Chester Hospital will want to know what the basis of the inquiry is. And as she rightfully says, the CQC has been in and has made lots of recommendations, especially because of the inadequacy. I have asked for a submission on progress from the CQC to understand what progress has actually been made, because I've been informed that there has been some progress made, but equally there is lots of other areas within which there isn't progress, and I am absolutely making sure that I am receiving regular updates on that, because as she rightfully says, every parent wants to see change. In the end, this is about so many lives. Parents have had to go through such heartbreaking situation just to get to justice, and they do deserve disclosure, so I really do thank her for that. But where the inquiry identifies lessons on safeguarding vulnerable patients or how management responds to patient safety concerns, this government will examine them rigorously and take forward all recommendations that are deliverable, justified and in the public interest. Madam Deputy Speaker, there is a huge amount of interest inside and outside this chamber about the professional regulation of managers within the NHS. We all know that the NHS needs and deserves the best leaders. We are committed to supporting their development and professionalism and to strengthen accountability where they fall short. Work is already underway to develop an NHS College of Leadership and Management to support and develop NHS leaders. And in addition, we will legislate in this Parliament to enable the Health and Care Professionals Council to begin to operate a statutory barring system for senior managers. The statutory barring mechanism will enable the Health and Care Professionals Council to prevent senior NHS leaders whose conduct is unacceptable from working again in senior roles. The government has also launched the Maternity and Neonatal Task Force, personally chaired by my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, and it will translate the recommendations of the noble lady, Baroness Amos, into action. Madam Deputy Speaker, the right honourable gentleman has campaigned against government overreach his entire career, and I respect him for that. I know he will agree with me that our democracy rests on a separation of powers, and I trust our independent judiciary to get on with the job. There are well-established criminal processes and procedures for how expert evidence is used at criminal trials, and in our democracy there are also routes for people to challenge convictions if they protest their innocence, even for Lucy Letby. It is not for me or the government to undermine those processes. Our attention should remain on the families and parents impacted by this case and continue to work towards providing answers and closure for them. That is what this government is focused on, and we trust the Thirlwall Inquiry to give us those answers. Thank you.